Hey, welcome back, everybody. Let me ask you something. When you look back on your career, what do you measure? Many of us will answer that question in some similar way. Either it's how busy the job was, the pressures and the responsibilities, the amount of time spent at work or on deployments, or all the problems that got dropped in our laps regularly. And those answers are normal because effort is visible, sacrifice is visible. Being the one who shows up and gets the job done, those things matter in our world. Always have and always will. However, the reality is being busy doesn't necessarily mean you made an impact. You can put in 4 years, you can put in 40 years, and still struggle to explain what actually changed because you were there. It's no knock on you, it's simply a byproduct of these careers. And generally speaking, we aren't encouraged to ask the different questions. Questions like, does what I do actually make the team better? Do I improve the system by being there? Are the people around me stronger or better because I was there? But one day, whenever your transition happens, your role will change. And when it does, the question that starts to matter more isn't what you did. It's what differences did you make happen because of what you did? We'll get more into this topic, but first, let's take a quick break. The grind doesn't need an introduction. You feel it in the early mornings, in the long days, in those moments when quitting would be easier, but you don't. Grind, spelled G-R-N-D, isn't just a brand, it's a mindset. It's the decision to keep moving forward even when progress feels slow and nobody's watching. Founded by a former Army Ranger, Grind Activewear is built around one simple idea. Give everything you have and then give more. Rooted in American grit and culture, every piece is designed with purpose and commitment woven into the fabric. It's functional, durable, and built to hold up under real effort. Grind is made for people who outwork the rest. And when you wear Grind, you're not just wearing a logo. You're representing how you live, how you train, and how you show up. So visit thegrindcollective.com. That's the GRND collective.com and use the promo code TRANSITION15 for 15% off your order. You're already on the grind. Now wear it. When someone starts thinking about the idea of impact, at first it seems simple, almost obvious. Of course your work should matter. Of course the mission should be better because you were there. We're the people they call on when something goes sideways. We're the ones who know exactly how people actually see the world as predator and prey. We understand true pressure and responsibility. Your role becomes part of how you see yourself. It's not just what you do, but part of who you are. And our environments depend on it. They depend on people who take ownership, who care about doing the job well, and who carry a sense of pride in the role that they've earned. That identity gets reinforced every day. But then one day, a different question starts to creep in. If the role changes, what's left? Because when your identity has been built around responsibility and performance, shifting the lens to impact can feel a bit awkward. You might start wondering whether the work you've been doing has value outside of this environment. You might wonder whether someone on the outside world understands the significance of what you accomplished, or whether it just sounds like a highlight reel. That's a difficult realization for a lot of us, because most of us never had to step back and define why it mattered. Self-reflection, beyond admitting our screw-ups in an after-action debrief, isn't usually part of the operational rhythm. But when you pause long enough to think about impact, you begin separating your identity from the role itself. And that shift can feel unsettling at first, because it challenges a belief that many of us keep tucked away in the back of our minds. That belief that simply being someone who carries their share of the load is enough. But sometimes the deeper value is found somewhere else entirely. And once that idea starts settling in, it begins to touch something else. Your ego. Ego. It's a word that gets thrown around a lot. But in this context, it isn't about arrogance. Because most of us aren't walking around trying to prove we're better than everyone else. The ego in this case is more subtle. It's that part of you that wants to know your work is recognized. It's the part that wants to know your effort means something to the people around you. And again, there's nothing unreasonable in thinking that way. Because in these professions, they're built on teamwork and trust. Recognition plays a key role in that. It reinforces standards. It shows appreciation for effort. It tells people their contribution mattered. But over time, that recognition can become fuel. Not in an unhealthy way at first. Just enough to reinforce the sense that you know the systems. You know how to get the job done. People start looking to you because you've proven yourself. But then imagine removing that environment. What happens to that recognition then? This is where we often start protecting our ego without even realizing it. We hold tightly to the idea that what we've done should speak for itself, but it often doesn't translate the way we expect. That recognition attached to our work lives inside this culture. However, outside this culture, our experience can become invisible unless it's explained the right way. And that realization can hit the ego harder than we expect. It introduces a new kind of uncertainty. If the recognition doesn't automatically travel with you, then what does? And the answer circles back to something more significant: impact. But recognizing that difference requires a certain kind of honesty with yourself. It requires being willing to look past the respect aspect and ask a harder question. Am I focused on being seen as valuable or on creating value? For most of us, the answer is probably a mix of both. But once you start asking that question, it becomes harder to ignore another habit of these careers. The habit of staying busy in ways that feel important, but that don't always move the mission forward the way we think they do. Being busy becomes a shield. But busyness can quietly do something else. It can prevent you from looking inward and asking, is what I'm doing actually improving anything? Beyond the task or what's going on in the moment. And unfortunately, constant activity doesn't automatically create progress. You can become so reliable at handling issues that your organization unconsciously depends on you to keep addressing them. That's where busyness turns into functional protection. You protect the system from having to evolve because you keep managing the consequences. However, asking deeper questions requires space. It requires slowing down enough to look at patterns. Things like, why does the team struggle with the same breakdowns all the time? Why does this process produce the same friction every time we deploy it? Questions like that often don't get answered if you or your organization is constantly running at full speed. They might get acknowledged, but often someone says, we'll deal with it next time. However, they do grab your attention when you step back and start looking for your impact instead of just activity. And over time, that kind of thinking changes the environment around you. Problems start appearing less often. Teams begin operating more smoothly. Because when they actually get addressed, that's impact. And once you can begin thinking that way, the pressure to be constantly recognized actually begins to fade a little. Because when your focus shifts towards creating real change, approval stops being the primary measure of whether your work mattered. This is a good point to stop and for me to tell you more about the new changes to the podcast. We'll get back to it when we come back. Real quick, let me take a minute to explain what's going on here. If you've been listening for a while, these episodes have been called, or used to be called, Tactical Transition Tips. The mission of the show hasn't changed, but the name has. Going forward, these episodes are now called Your Next Objective, as well as becoming its own standalone podcast. The reason for that is simple. I believe these episodes have grown into something bigger than just a segment inside the Transition Drill podcast. They're focused entirely on helping veterans and first responders think about and prepare for what comes next in your careers and your lives. Separating it into its own podcast makes the episodes easier to find, easier to follow, and easier for new listeners to discover. From now through the end of March, the episodes will still be released in both places, on the Transition Drill podcast and on the new Your Next Objective podcast. But starting in April, the episodes will be exclusively on the Your Next Objective feed. So please, take a second and follow or subscribe to Your Next Objective wherever you listen to or get podcasts, or if you watch on YouTube. Either way, you won't miss any future episodes. And it also helps the new podcast build momentum before the full transition happens. So thank you. Let's get back into this episode. Additionally, something else starts to happen when you shift your focus away from recognition and towards impact. In a weird way, it brings a sense of relief, because measuring your value through recognition is actually exhausting. Think about how often you check for that validation. Did anyone notice the extra hours I put in? Did the boss acknowledge my effort? Did my team recognize what I did to get the assignment done? Those thoughts, they often sit in the background. More often, though, than we like to admit. The problem is that recognition is unpredictable, or sometimes it never comes at all. It's simply a desire to be recognized for a hard effort. It's like someone tried to swim the length of a pool, and they look like a paddle wheel on a riverboat. Yes, it's a lot of effort, but did they get to the other end quicker than anybody else? Was the effort efficient? That inconsistency of recognition can create tension. And if recognition becomes the way you measure your contribution, your sense of value can actually start rising and falling based on how others respond to what you've done. The work itself doesn't change, but your sense of worth shifts because feedback around you varies. That's a difficult way to operate over the long term. On the other hand, when you begin measuring yourself by the impact of your work instead, that feedback exists whether someone applauds or not. That kind of clarity does something important to your mindset. Instead of wondering how your contribution is being perceived, you begin focusing on whether the outcome improved because you were involved. And that perspective becomes especially important when you begin thinking about your future beyond this world. The impact that your involvement created, that tends to follow you much longer. It becomes part of your professional reputation. It's the evidence that the work you're doing actually leaves things better than when you got there. And that realization eventually leads to a deeper form of pride, one that isn't dependent on the role itself. But then over time, the shift towards impact produces something deeper than recognition ever could. It builds self-respect. The kind that comes from knowing the work you did actually strengthens something beyond your assignment. I'm guessing that when you think about the people you've respected most in your career, chances are it wasn't just because they were competent or capable. Competence is a given. It's expected that everybody is supposed to know their job and how to do it. What likely separates certain people in your memory is what happened around them. Teams function better when they were involved. How they handled difficult situations and directed aspects beyond just their immediate responsibility. Problems that were consistently an issue started getting resolved because they looked deeper than the surface. Or they didn't just simply sit there and complain about it, but then kept doing it the same way. Those kinds of people often don't talk about their impact out loud. In many instances, they wouldn't even describe their involvement as impactful. but everyone around them realizes it. That's the quiet footprint of impact. And when someone realizes their work has created that kind of footprint, the pride they feel begins coming from a different place. It's no longer tied to being the most noticeable person in the room. It's more tied to knowing the environment improved because of their presence. Remember, the influence you had on people and systems doesn't disappear the moment you move on. It continues showing up in how others operate. But often, many times, those things rarely come with recognition ceremonies. And in many cases, the person who created the impact rarely sees how far it travels. But in no way does it reduce its value. If anything, it proves that the work mattered in a way that extended beyond that moment. And that realization can change how you approach the rest of your career. Instead of only asking how you can simply perform your role better, it's about asking a more important question. What can I leave behind that will make this place and the people better after I'm gone? That mindset doesn't depend on how close someone is to their transition. It applies whether you're thinking about next year, the next several years, or over a decade from now. Because the habits you build now will shape the kind of impact you create moving forward. Let's take another break, and when we come back, I'll go over the specific transition group tips. When it comes to sunglasses, first responders and military members definitely don't baby them. They get dropped, thrown in a utility pocket, or tossed in gear bags. Frontline Optics was created for that reality. You get premium eye protection without paying designer brand prices for something that won't survive your lifestyle. From polarized UV 400 lenses to anti-reflective coatings and a water-repellent finish, every pair is designed to handle long days, harsh conditions, and real work. And here's where Frontline Optics separates themselves from the pack. When life happens and your glasses break, they offer a no-questions-asked replacement program, even for prescription glasses. On top of that, Frontline Optics was founded by a firefighter, and a portion of every purchase goes to support the First Responders Children's Foundation, helping families of those who gave everything. So if you're looking for sunglasses that look good, are built tough, and come from a company that actually understands the job, visit frontlineoptics.com and use the promo code TRANSITION10 to get 10% off your purchase. Frontline Optics, from a first responder for the front lines. At some point, the idea of impact stops being theoretical and it starts becoming practical. Because no matter where you are in your career, right now, there are ways to start shifting how you think about your contribution. And I'm not talking about being overly dramatic, but just in ways that begin aligning your efforts with the kind of impact that actually carries forward. Close range group. You're less than a year from your transition. One of the most important shifts you can make: translate your skills into outcomes. Many of us, when we approach our transition, we describe our experience in terms of responsibilities. We list the roles that we held, the assignments we had, the tasks or duties we perform. But outside of this environment, those descriptions don't always show the real value of what you did. Instead of explaining what your job required, start thinking about what changed because you did it. What problems stopped repeating themselves? What processes became smoother? Who became more capable because of something that you taught them? When you frame your work through outcomes instead of duties, a hiring manager can see the real impact behind the experience that you bring. Medium range group. If you're still several years out from your transition, you're in a position and still have time to influence your environment. Your objective is improve the systems around you. Look at the processes your team handles every day, the way training is handled, operational routines, and then impacting small improvements in those areas compounds over time. When you focus on strengthening the systems, instead of simply completing your assignment within the system, the organization performs better because of your impact. Those effects last beyond your current role or position. Long-range group. You're early in your career. Transition for you is still distant. There's a mindset worth building right now that will shape everything that follows. Serve the mission first. I know that might sound obvious, but the discipline behind it runs deeper than most people realize. Serving the mission first means making decisions based on what actually strengthens things around you. It means choosing the action that improves the team or your organization, even when recognition is unlikely. Over time, that habit builds something valuable. It's about your credibility, and it's about developing a reputation for putting the mission ahead of your ego. It's those qualities that tend to follow people wherever their career eventually takes them. If you want more on these ideas, I put out a weekly newsletter with additional insights, resources, and perspectives to help you plan for what's coming next. Check out the link in the show notes to sign up. So, before you move on with the rest of your day, sit with one question for a moment. Not about your next assignment or that next promotion, not even about when you might eventually transition. Just this. If someone walked into your operational space tomorrow and spent the day observing the way things operate, would they be able to see the impact that you have? Would your team function better because you're part of it? Would the systems run a little smoother because of something you address? Would the people around you become more capable because of the way you led, trained, or supported them? Or is the value of your position simply a body filling the role? Don't take this as that I'm criticizing. It's just a question worth thinking about. The uniform and the title belong to the role, but the impact you create, that belongs to you. And the earlier you start measuring your career that way, you're not just preparing for a future transition. You're deciding what kind of footprint you'll leave behind. I appreciate you staying until the end. Staying till the end helps the engagement ratings. Please send me your comments. Be honest. Tell me what you like or what I'm doing wrong so that I can make changes to best benefit you. Please share the podcast with anyone who you think will enjoy it or benefit from it. And don't forget, please follow the new podcast, Your Next Objective. Stay safe, and I'll catch you on the next one.